As your Metaphor ReFantazio playthrough comes to an end, you may have missed some lore Easter eggs or even the underlying theme behind the journey. You traveled through Uchronia with the protagonist, finding the strength to overcome his fear and anxiety, but did you catch the untold lore happening in the background as well? If not, that's okay, because I'm gonna be going over that exact lore as I put together this beautifully crafted Metaphor ReFantazio DXRacer chair, who is the sponsor of today's video. If you want a chair that's built for a king, I'll have a link to it in the description down below, and you can use code TAG at checkout to save you even more money. Now, let's start by discussing the untold lore in the Dragon Temple. Some fans dislike the design of the Dragon Temple dungeon because it played differently from the rest, but this may have been intentional to tie in a lot of parallels that went unnoticed. While there were some shocking reveals in the Dragon Temple, if you were one of the few Etrian Odyssey fans, this was an even bigger reveal than any of us could have even imagined. Now, some of these just could be a few Easter eggs, but some people believe that Metaphor ReFantazio is actually a prequel to Etrian Odyssey because of this dungeon. In Etrian Odyssey, one of the big reveals is that you're actually in a post-apocalyptic Japan, with the map of the 5th stratum taking place in Lost Shinjuku. Metaphor ReFantazio's Dragon Grace Shinjuku has the exact same level design, floor name, enemy gimmicks, and music as Lost Shinjuku in Etrian Odyssey. Both dungeons take place in a skyscraper in Shinjuku, with their map designs being identical. Another parallel is that this is when they introduced the gimmick in Metaphor where the enemies only move when you do, which is a direct tie-in that they may have pulled straight out of Etrian Odyssey. This connection is even further emphasized with the village being named Ectria and the dream of Adini for Ectria to be a town bustling with people from far and wide. Ectria is technically in the same location as Etria in Etrian Odyssey, based on its proximity to Lost Shinjuku and also being in the 5th stratum. In Etrian Odyssey, you're also going to learn about the last efforts of humanity to save their civilization against pollution, which could be tied to Magla and theoretically be the world that we're experiencing today in Metaphor ReFantazio. When searching for a few counter arguments for if Metaphor ReFantazio canonically would be a prequel to Etrian Odyssey or just an Easter egg, I found this comment which brings up a lot of good points to dispel this theory. And so it's gonna say, quote, "It's a cute reference, but things don't actually line up. Yggdrasil was created to fix an environmental calamity in Etrian Odyssey, and any wars in Etrian Odyssey's apocalyptic past was a result of dwindling resources caused by environmental damages, not the other way around. There are a host of other details that just don't line up, but primarily, Etrian Odyssey only could conceivably make sense if it was in the far, far future of Metaphor, as Shinjuku is much further underground in Etrian Odyssey than we see in the Dragon Temple of Metaphor, and even then it would require all of the Metaphor humans to turn themselves back into normal humans, get rid of Magla, reclaim the old world, and destroy themselves again via climate change, all while replicating a society that is almost an exact match to the version of Japan that existed thousands and thousands of years ago in the past that they possess no actual records for in Metaphor ReFantazio. Now, I feel like this comment alone dispels a lot of the canonical speculations, and it brings me back down to maybe this was just a really cool tie-in, like a if you know type of reference. But some of the things that were mentioned in that comment could be dispelled with DLC or sequels, so it is worth mentioning. Let's say, for instance, everyone has to revert back to humans. Who's to say that that's something that's not lost in time as time progresses to Etrian Odyssey and, you know, word of mouth things begin to morph into what it actually was. But that's just my thoughts. We spent some time discussing theories, so let's get back to the facts. Now, this is the packaging that the chair came in. I have my Metaphor keychain, which doubles as a box opener, and we can see that everything is perfectly packaged and taken care of. So we have the instructions, and you can put the chair together in 5 easy steps, which we're gonna see a little bit later. But just look at this. Look at the detailing on the back of this chair, like it's so chef kissed. And it's packaged perfectly. The front just looks immaculate. When I saw this, I was incredibly excited. We got the head cover as well as the Gallica back pillow. So now let's go ahead and take everything else out of the box, and then we can go ahead and get started on putting this beauty together. For step 1, we're gonna take this base and we're gonna connect the 5 wheels to the bottom of this base. And then we're gonna combine these 2 pieces together and we're gonna pop that into the base. And that's going to conclude everything we need to do for step 1, and you'll get something like this. My perspective of the entire story changed once we entered Elda's Sanctum. There were some big reveals, like I said, in the Dragon Temple that we just discussed, but learning the truth about the origins of the Elda tribe was a big shocker. It stated that the word Elda comes from the ancient word meaning the old ones, and I presume this to be the word elder in ancient times, which would be modern day Tokyo. The ancient times refers to quote unquote the world before, when mankind existed prior to the war started by the discovery of Magla, or some call it magic. The world before is revealed to, like I said earlier, be modern day Japan in the Dragon Temple, which we just discussed, where you see the ruins of Shinjuku from the ancient times. This peaceful world was all ruined once Magla was discovered, and wars began to break out over righteousness, causing even more fear and anxiety. Mankind went overboard and used Magla in warfare, creating things like dragons, leading to its inevitable destruction. During these wars, most of the humans split into their own tribes and evolved based on the conditions of their separation, leading to the creation of the other 8 tribes we know in the current times of Uchronia. The Elda tribe survived the old world due to their ancestors fleeing from the war and thus saving their tribe from everything that came after it. These wars caused a ton of fear and anxiety, which we know is the source of Magla. Not being able to manage these large amounts of Magla caused the humans of ancient times to transform into what we know as humans in the world of Uchronia that we're playing in metaphor currently. Once the Elda began integrating back into the world of Uchronia, they took on the name Elda due to the word human now being associated with these monsters. The Elda tribe is technically the untainted bloodline of the human race from ancient times. The Sanctus Church was created to regulate the use of Magla, resulting in the introduction of igniters, so that no magic calamity would ever happen again to ruin civilization like they did in the ancient times. Now we've touched on some speculative lore, some factual lore, and so now let's finally discuss the overall themes of the game. Learning that fantasy has the ability to change reality if people are determined enough. Now for step 2, we're gonna go ahead and unpackage this chair. Like, look at this, it's just so smooth. And you see, I'm excited. Like, this is my first time touching it and seeing how high quality everything is. But for step 2, we're gonna unscrew these parts here and we're gonna take out these screws, and we're gonna do that for both the left and the right side. They provide you a tool to do that, but then we're gonna take out the base. This is gonna be the seat of the chair, and these 2 parts are gonna connect. So the chair is gonna slide in where we just took out those screws, and then once it slides in here, we can attach the screws back to make sure that the top part connects to the bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that for both sides. And like I said, they provide you a tool that makes this extremely easy. And then this finish we're gonna put on both sides, so that way we cover up the tooling and make sure the chair comes out and looks more sleek. The entire game, the protagonist's only objective was to lift the curse from the prince. I spent the entire game waiting for that reunion to happen. And when we finally lifted the curse, and now Hulkenberg, along with the main character, could finally have that warm embrace and that reunion. Now, my heart was ripped out when we found out that he had been assassinated, but this is where the truth about the protagonist started to be revealed. The protagonist never really existed or knew the prince. The main character was created as a manifestation of Magla, linked to the book about Utopia, from the strong desires of the prince to change the world. I mentioned earlier that the themes of the game were learning that fantasy had the ability to change reality if the people were determined enough. The main character lived out all of the fantasies that the prince had for himself, such as traveling the world and becoming a hero. When the two merged together, the prince was able to live out his dreams through the main character and thus used his fantasies to change his reality. The protagonist's default name is Will that we saw in the manga, and I feel like this is poetically fitting as he was created based on the will of the prince to create that utopia that he read about in his books. We've seen the concepts of manifestations of Magla before with the dragons being manifested from Draciodos, but it was all still such a giant curveball to me. Technically, these are things that maybe someone could have predicted based on these other descriptions and lore pieces, but I know that for the most part, no one was able to see this curveball coming. This theme is even further emphasized because in Metaphor ReFantazio, you're going to be shown each character's struggles not just with reality, but their fantasies as well. This is no different for the protagonist or even the prince, but he continues to push forward to make his fantasies become something that are more than just fiction, and thus the fantasy lives on. Now for step 3, we're going to unscrew these so that way we can connect the piece later. So I unscrew the top, unscrew the bottom with the tool that they provided for us. And then once we do that, we're gonna screw them back in, but we're gonna use that to attach this piece right here, where I screw the top and the bottom to make sure that it's firmly connected. And now that we are complete with that, we're gonna flip the chair on its side so that way we can connect both pieces. The piece that we made in step 1 and the piece that we just finished assembling here. Flip this bad boy over and we're almost done, but not until we get that Galaga pillow in place. So this is the chair in its entirety. You're gonna also be able to connect a neck pillow that you can adjust based on your height. And then you'll finally be ready to have that first warm embrace sitting in this DXRacer chair that's built for a king. These are gonna conclude my thoughts about the Metaphor ReFantazio lore, but if you want a chair that's built for a king, I'll have a link in the description down below. You saw us build it, you're able to see how easy the assembly was, and now you can use code TAG at checkout to save you money when you purchase it for yourself. But if you want to see more JRPG content like this, feel free to check out this video right here where I go over my honest review about Atelier Yumiya. Thank you guys for your time, and I'll catch you in the next one.